Great ratings for the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 51 pulling in 111.3 million viewers. That was down just a bit from last year, but it's the fourth best ratings for the Super Bowl ever. And as you can imagine, I can guarantee you a lot of people probably late for work yesterday after the Super Bowl. Speaking of that, nearly 30% of Americans are late for work. That's according to a new study conducted by CareerBuilder.com. In light of this, I want to bring on business strategist Michael Ray Newman. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, brother. How you doing?
I am well. So what's the deal here? I mean, 30% of Americans late for work. I would assume that this is a repetitive thing. I mean, it's not just a one-day thing. Why aren't we seeing more people fired for this kind of behavior? Or should they be?
Well, I mean, depending on the culture and depending on the industry, we are seeing a super uptick in tardiness or lackadaisical as far as when people are called punching the time clock. Because the reality is a lot of people are the last thing they do before they go to bed or even during dinner, they are still active and checking their email. So it's been a real big conversation. We do a lot of training at ZIGLAR International on time management, accountability, and this has really come up to the top of the it's been bubbled up to the top the last couple of years because the millennials, since last year, there's more millennials than there are baby boomers in the workplace, and by 2020 there'll be more millennials than anybody else in the workplace.
All right, so what should employers do? Should they adopt a more relaxed attitude about work hours? But, you know, when I sit there and I think about that, Michael, I think, okay, now you're letting the inmates run the asylum. Instead of expecting people to rise up or, hey, you're out of here, we'll go find somebody else, isn't that kind of dumbing down the standards?
That is, I agree with you 100%. It is dumbing down the standards. What has to happen, we were born to win, but before you can win, you have to prepare to win and plan to win. And we have so many people in the workplace today that we are dumbing down the standards. We are dumbing down, but it's all about education and teaching people time management skills and holding themselves accountable, even outside of work, to incorporate some kind of balance in their life.
All right, so you brought up a very good point, though, earlier when you were talking. You talked about, people answering work emails and text messages after hours. So if people are putting in more time at home, should they be given more leeway when it comes to work hours?
I personally, because we work with two types of groups. We work with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are people that work in the workplace. We encourage that kind of culture to spend 10% of your time doing something that's not your job, that you can develop, your side hustle, something we encourage it inside the workplace. And you're right there. I think in certain places we should be more lax. But when it comes to time, we only have 24 hours in a day. There has to be a starting point. There has to be a get up, get ready, check up from the neck up, and show up. Because if we don't, it's human nature to procrastinate. And that's why this is going to become a problem and maybe an epidemic of proportions here in the next couple of years if we don't get a handle on it and really teach people where they need to land.
Talking to business strategist Michael Ray Newman right now. So with that said, is it time to retire the time clock mentality?
Oh, no, I think not. I think that's, like I said, there's only 24 hours in a day, and we have to have a starting point. Now, I do think there's parameters of which we can be more laxed around it, and there's times for us to really be creative, but there's also times to put your nose down and start grinding.
Michael, I can remember back in the early 90s when I worked for a television station, and they started distributing cell phones and beepers. And I remember people just throwing a fit saying, look, if they want me on call, if they want me to basically be attached to this place 24/7, then they better pay me for it. Of course, that never happened, but they were attached to it 24/7. So when you sit there and you look at it from that perspective, the employers are getting an unfair advantage, if you will, because they do have these people on call. You do feel that pressure to check emails and work from home, and you're not getting paid for it. So where's the trade-off? Maybe the trade-off is, hey, look, if you want to come in tomorrow at 10 instead of 8, go ahead, because I know you're putting in a couple hours at home. I'm cool with it. Are you cool with that? If somebody's responsible and getting their job done?
Yes. Because work more and more, the culture of the United States and the world, what we're seeing in our training at ZIGLAR is work is something you do, not necessarily somewhere you go. And that is a fact. And if there are times we have to be at work, we have to be ready to rock and roll and dressed up and ready to go when we have certain benchmarks or meetings that have to be done. But when not, and if the person is performing above standards, it's okay to be lax in some of those times. And we do think there's some kind of happy medium. That's the bottom line.
What do you see? Last question I have for you, Michael, when it comes to millennials.
Sure.
What Do you see millennials as being a problem? Do you see millennials as, because I hear people all the time saying, man alive, these millennials have no work ethic. They just expect everything right now. They expect to be at the top of the food chain, the best wages. Are you seeing that too? Are you hearing that from employers out there?
We are hearing that from employers, and we're seeing a little bit of it. And that question is a whole 30-minute topic itself, brother. You're not going to sit there and talk about that. But what I'm really seeing is when millennials, they do want to collaborate, they don't want to compete. But what I'm seeing, the millennials that get engaged in the workplace, that become competitive and driven, are over exceeding expectations by a long shot. So I believe there is hope.
All right. Michael, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Always good, brother.
All right. Business strategist Michael Ray Newman. What do you think on this, Paul?
That's interesting.